Hey there guys, my name's Danny Till and welcome to my quick tutorial on how to paint a daisy. These are seaside daisies. I've got them in the garden and they do vary in colour. They're really quite pretty. When they are forming they are white, and that is what we're tackling today, and as they sort of mature and get a little bit older they turn into this beautiful pink colour. So it's an either painting. You can go pink or perhaps the white. It just depends on what you want to do with your particular painting. So the way I'm going to approach this challenge for the daisy is I'm going to focus on the background with a little bit of texture. I really quite like this colour from Marte paint. It is a mauve colour, so I'll be using that for the background, and what I'll do is I'll pop some onto my palette, and because it's the background and I'm going to be using a fair bit, I'll just pop that straight there. And what I want to do is I actually want to give the background a few different tones and colours. So in order to do that, I've got some water here to the side. I'm using a silver black velvet size 6 brush, clean water and paper towel, and I'll just pop the water onto a few drops onto the mauve colour, and as you can see it's super vibrant, and I do want it a little bit watery. And I'm actually going to also bring in a little bit of the Micador colours, so the indigo blue, which is a very rich blue. I'm just going to add a little bit of that to the side. As you can see, it's a very vibrant blue, and I'm going to use that as my background. And I want to merge and mingle the colours on the paper. At the moment I have the daisy quite high up on my paper, as I'm thinking I do want to do some sort of drips and perhaps leave a white area coming down for the stem of the daisy. So that we'll see how we go. Now in order to do that you can use some masking fluid, frisket, tape, etc. To start off with, I'm actually going to just try and keep it white myself. So popping your brush into the purple and the blue, I'm just going to do a bit of a mix, and I'm going to come in and just outline the daisy itself. I'm letting the water and the paint sort of do its own thing, and crisscrossing my brush movements to outline using the point of the brush to get the best flow that I can and the most precise, and just with a little bit of water dragging this out. Now I'm using bee paper, which I don't normally use, and I believe because of the texture of the bee paper it is actually going to absorb the colour in quite quickly. Now my white space that I'm going to tackle is, just draw that down with your brush, so that it'll look like a stem. And then all I'm going to do now is I'm going to just keep bringing the colour in once I get this stem down. So this is giving me a guideline, and I want it to sort of look like a drip, so I'm just going to finish it off like so. And again, just coming in with the purple and the blue, mixing it on my palette, and now we can sort of freely drop it in. Now work quite quickly. I am working on dry paper and I'm just jiggling and moving the colour around. I do want them to intermingle on the paper. And again, so I'm just going to outline all around here. Again, working quickly and trying to soften those edges as I do this. Bringing in a little bit more colour and softening. And I will turn my paper as I go, because this will allow me to have more control of what I'm doing. Now if you need to bring in a little bit more blue, do so. Again, this is the indigo from the Micador Brilliant watercolor set. The colour is very vibrant, and then just dropping in that purple merging and mingling on the paper. And by adding the water, I'm softening the edges and just circular motions to really get that really nice soft edge onto what I'm painting. Again, I'll move that around and come in with some of these darker values. Now you can wet your paper first and give it more of a an area for that paint to travel, but because I want to get really into here where the petals are, I'm choosing more so not to have that area wet, so I have more control. Again, just working my way around. I'm working quite quickly, and by jiggling the brush, it's sort of giving me a softer finish to the edges. Again, bringing that water in, and just a little bit more of that blue again. And the water, and then just work my way around. Exactly the same technique. Now by merging and mingling on the paper, I've decided I want to go all the way to the edge and finish this off so it is completely purple. And what I want to do is, because I'm coming in and the paper is still wet from my previous layers, as I drop in more color, it will create these really pretty blooms. Again, because it's wet, you can push that color around and control the pattern that you're creating. Just a little bit more blue. Just popping that in. A bigger brush will cover the area quicker. And what I really want to do is I do want these blooms to create beautiful patterns. So ideally that's my background, and as you can see, as I pop in some extra water, it's going to create the blooms as I go, just popping in a little bit more of that blue and working my way down like so. Again, some more water, which will help create these really beautiful magical blooms. And I will zoom in and just let that camera pick up the focus. There we go. It's creating some beautiful blooms. It's pushing out the color from the mauve into the blue, and it's really making some lovely pattern. So with that done, I'm leaving some of the edges a little bit white. I'm going to dry this off with a hairdryer, and I'll come back for the details. Okay, so I've dried it off. Now the good thing about this bee paper is it actually takes a lot of water, and what I also do is a handy trick. When I am drying off the paper, it tends to curl and buckle as it's drying, and it curls and buckles forward, so it makes your paper quite wobbly. What I do is flip the painting over and start drying on the back, and that sort of reverses the be curling upwards, and it allows you to sort of have a more straighter edge to paint. If it was a really big problem and it did curve and buckle too much for you to start working on details, then I suggest you just press it in between a couple of clean absorbent pages of watercolor paper and then some weights. You want something to be able to absorb that moisture. If you just put weights on it with nothing, nothing will absorb the water out of your paper that you want to flatten. So ideally that's what you want to do. Now, in terms of details, I want to come in a little bit darker on these edges. So to make it look nice, I'm using the original colours still, so the purples and the blues, and I just want to come in and accentuate the depth. And as I do so, I curve my brush out so that I soften those edges. And I do want to keep these really nice textures that have been created. I'm just going around in some of these areas, just adding some more colour to darken those values. Now within this particular painting, you will find that the petals do reveal some of the background. So what you want to do is, you want to come in and bring in that purple or your background colour that you've chosen. So within here, these guys have parted ways. And then just with a little bit of water, just want to soften those edges. Like so. Now you can come in with some greys that are already pre-mixed. Just dropping in a little bit more water just to soften where I've come in a bit darker. And then straight with that blue, the indigo blue, I'm going to come in and just separate some of these guys and let the colour bleed through into the wet paper. I really want this daisy to pop out from the background. So when I do come in and do the shading, I don't want to go too heavy. Alright, now as I was saying, you can come in with your greys that are pre-mixed and you can do some wonderful stuff, or you can do some sort of muted tone yourself of some of the colours that you have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with some orange. It's quite a bright, vibrant orange. Clean out my brush, and the same blue that we've used, pop that in and really mute out that colour. Maybe just a little bit more orange in there. So it's like a greeny grey, and I really want to use that as my highlight, my shading. And by placing more water in there, I'm diluting that colour so it's not going to be as intense. And then I can come in and start working on areas that I just want to shade a little bit. I'm going to work on dry and just the lightest touch of this shaded colour that I've made. Just bringing it up. You really just want it super, super light, but enough to create the shadows. And I'll just work my way around the daisy. Now as these daisies mature and actually turn into the pink, the edges start coming to life in a really beautiful pink colour. So you can almost add in a little bit of that if you want to. Just working my way through. Now where two petals overlap, this area in here is going to be significantly darker because the petal on top is creating a shadow. So don't be afraid to go a little bit darker where those shadows are. If you need to add a little bit more blue into your mix, do so, and that will allow for some really nice dark shading. And like I said, the ones that overlap, like here, the top petal is creating a shadow. So go in nice and dark there. And come back to areas as I'm doing now. And just find the petals that are overlapping within the drawing and come in a little bit heavier with your darker value, like so. And then just continue coming in with your other shading. I'm just sort of dropping it in. I'm not being overly specific. Like so. And there's sort of that shaded area that's there. You can go grey if you want to. It's totally up to you. And just a little bit more of that blue in there will give me a more purpley darker value. And I just want to pop that in to some of these. With a clean brush, you can just draw out that colour. And this area here, what I want to do is just super lightly wash in the colour. So I'm just bringing water up to all of the petals. Again, you can darken some of the values as you go. Like so. I'll move this away now and just come in with all my oranges, yellows, etc. values on this Micador set. And straight in with the orange. I'm going to drop it in. Now, I have drawn on the sketch the actual hexagonal center point of the daisy, but in this instance I really just want to mix and merge the colors, and that will, if you've drawn it like I have, the actual lines will still show up through your painting. So I'm just dropping that in, dropping in some water and letting that sort of make its own bloom and pattern. And then I want to take the yellow and just, I haven't gone all the way the first time, and just these edges, just want to bring out the water just a little bit with the yellow and finish off my circle. So just using the tip there. And maybe just pick up a little bit of the colour, so a bit of paper towel. I just want to pick up a little bit of that colour, like so. And then come in with the yellow again. And with the yellow, I just want to drag it out onto just a little bit of each of these petals. You don't have to do all of them, just a few, like so. Clean water is key when you are working with white. And then just in with dropping in some of that orange into some of these segments that are drawn in. Now as this flower gets a little bit older, what happens is these hexagonal sections open up and you get little white and orange areas. So it's wet on wet, but still trying to keep some of that detail in there and texture it like so. Now also with this, I will come in and do a little bit more of the background, because once you paint in your whites, you can also then sort of distinguish whether you need more or less in your background as well. So you can add more depth. And I'm just going to go down that little bit darker with my drip. A little bit of water to soften it out. And just that indigo. Let it travel. Where I'm just coming in and finishing off these petals now. And separating any of them that need to have a little bit more form that I may have missed the first time around. There's no given rule that you have to paint a certain way when you do watercolors, and coming back and finishing areas is always okay. Deepening your backgrounds, having a play, adding more colour, there's nothing wrong with that. Background first, not background first, personal choice, depends on what you're painting, whether you want to do your background first. In this case we did the background first to almost outline our work, so we had something to work with there. And again, just adding a little bit more Mauve. But again, by going that little bit darker around your daisy with your background, what happens is it just pops a bit more. Now I can go darker and do another wash over this, but as it's a tutorial and I'm just giving everyone a rough sort of gist of the technique that I'm using, I won't advance it and go darker. Now this has been dried off, and I'm just going to pop in a few final touches, and I want to use a little bit more yellow and just make some of these areas glow a little bit. Like so. And then just use a clean brush to drag out that yellow a little bit in some of those areas. Not overly, but just enough to make it glow. And then just back in with the orange. And what I really want to do is just intensify some of these hexagonal shapes. So I've come in loose at the start, and I just want to draw in some detail by dropping in a little bit more of that orange. Now, I'm just spraying a little bit of that purple with the orange. I just want to pop it in just to the end bits here and darken the value, just to create shadow. So all I've got is the original orange with a little bit of that background colour that we've used. And I just want to go a little bit darker on these few petals. So all I'm doing is just dropping in that darker value and letting that merge and mingle. And then coming in just that little bit darker in some of the sections. So bringing in that purple and dropping that in. A little bit more of that mauve just on one section. And then clean brush and drag some of that colour. Really try and soften the edges there. A bit more orange, like so. Automatically that makes such a big difference, coming in with a little bit of that original mauve and purple. Starting a little bit more of that blue, and then just dropping that value in just on one side, just to darken it just that little bit. Soften it. You don't want to muddy up your colour. But if I bring that up for you, you should be able to see how it's just darkened up a little bit, but that glow is still there. Now, to cover this up, a little bit of paper towel, and we're just going to throw around a little bit of colour. The aim of the daisy was to create a textured background and make it interesting. We've got all the blooms, and I want to have some of that colour sprayed onto the daisy and some not so much. So I'm going to leave a little bit of that daisy visible, and just quickly wipe down this palette with some paper towel, and we're going to throw in some of that mauve again, and we're going to water that down. Now my water is getting a little bit muddy, and this is a size 20 snap brush, and this is where I'm going to make the mess. So just throwing out the purple, mauve colour. I'll bring in a little bit of that blue now, wet that up a bit. Like so, and I want some big drops in there. Like that. Take this away. And then any areas that you feel that you want to sort of wisp in a little bit more colour, or dot in a little bit more colour, you can do so. Like I said, I want to keep the daisy free from any splatters. Just moving that colour a little bit down the bottom. And that will dry in, so I'll give that a bit of drying time, and I'll come back and we'll assess and we'll go from there. Okay, so this has just been dried off. All the splatters are intact. The center has been darkened, and ideally you can use this as a card. Pop some writing on the side. I think it'd make a really, really beautiful birthday card, or even a tag for a present would be really great. Thank you very much everyone for watching. If you like what I do and you want to see more content, these videos do take a little bit of time, sourcing the reference photos, obviously, paper time, paints used. If you do like what I do, down in the description you will find a buy me a coffee donation, which would be much appreciated because it does help produce these quick little videos for you guys to do. Again, thank you. I will also have the link to the outline in the description, and I'll just quickly run through the brushes I did use, which is the 20 snap size 6 silver black velvet brush. I used the Micador Brilliant watercolor discs, and I also used the Marte watercolor premium tube in the mauve for the background. Again, water, paper towel, and eraser pencil for drawing. Hope you enjoyed and have fun with it. Thank you again.